And we are live. Whenever you are, wherever you are, thank you for joining the Design of Everyday People, where I talk to senior designers from all over the world, and you can literally ask them anything. So stick around to the end where we'll get your questions answered. But of course, throughout the conversation, you should be dropping your questions in the chat so we can get to them. But let's start by making this session as interactive as possible by dropping a comment or an emoji about where you are tuning in from, so we just know where in the world are you listening to this conversation. So welcome to How to Be a AAA Designer. But before we get into the topic itself, just want to do a quick round of introductions, and I want to start. I am Chris, the founder of UX Playbook, where I help designers navigate a fuzzy UX career with playbooks, courses, and coaching, from building your first portfolio to leading your first design team, and really resources to help you get clarity as a designer. But that's enough about me. If you've been here before, um, you'll know me already. Today, I am joined by Harrison Telyan. I probably should have checked. A designer, investor, and a YC founder. So Harrison will bring Harrison out, and he'll tell us how to pronounce his surname, which I probably should have asked him before this. Harrison, how are you doing? Good to have you, man.
Dude, you're so funny. You totally actually got it. It's Telyan. Yeah,
Telyan.
it's Telyan. Harrison Telyan. And you know what's so funny is I actually have two middle names. So it is Harrison Seaborn Southall Telyan. So if anyone wants to take my identity, feel free. You're one step closer.
I'm glad I didn't try to pronounce your middle names as well, because I definitely would have messed one of them up. But for the folks that don't know you, Harrison, tell us about yourself and what you're up to these days.
Yeah, sure. So I can give you like the mini director's cut. I went to Rhode Island School of Design. So I'm a designer like everyone here watching. So I can certainly empathize. And so it stands for RISD is what the cool kids call it. People that have gone to RISD say it's reason I'm sleep deprived as the acronym. Right after school, where not a whole lot of professors believed in my path for UI and UX, I got my founding designer role at Imgur. So you guys may know it through Reddit as like the image hoster, but it was at one point like the 16th most trafficked website in the world, according to Alexa ratings. So that's pretty cool. And then after did a couple stints in Silicon Valley, right down the block actually, at Syndio and Clara, where I met my co-founder, my now co-founder, Agri Ahmed, who's also my best friend and my brother. And we went to Africa for about 4 years, and we took on Jumia, which is the Amazon of Africa, at grocery delivery. And they're also a New York publicly listed company. They're a stock on like the New York Stock Exchange. And we became about 5 times larger than their grocery delivery service. The unit economics didn't really work out, and I had to let go of like around 400 people that were like across from like support to delivery drivers, and it was crazy. There was like 8 or 9 pivots in there. It was just wild. And then my dad died, and it was just like this crazy dark place, and people started reaching out for engineers and designers, because my co-founder's an engineer, I'm a designer, and so we really couldn't fulfill that need. So we just started tapping on our friends, and fast forward to today, we're flirting with around 2 million ARR. We have a lot of cool things in the pipeline for our designers in terms of resources that we can provide them. But NUMI, in a nutshell, is your startup's design department. So we connect world-class designers with world-class companies working on world-class problems. And we really try to take a sincere focus on the designer. And so our fundamental belief is that if you focus on the designer, if NUMI focuses on the designer, and the designer is happy and is able to focus on our customer's client, right? Then if the customer's client is happy, then NUMI's customer is happy. And if the customer is happy, then NUMI's happy, and it just becomes this beautiful circle. And so that's on the NUMI side. And then separate from that, I also run Bottom Line Design, BLD, so go check it out on YouTube. But it's also, we get to connect with like founding designers or really just like cool, like design literate or design curious founders, and hear their take on how they approach the discipline, how they get the most out of it. And then last but not least, we're working on this other company called Flowglad. Flowglad.com, FLOWGLAD.com. And so if you are trying to grow your business as a designer, go sign up for it. We got something cooking that I think you're going to really like. It's going to help you make a lot more money on the internet. But I really appreciate you having me on. I look, for anyone that's watching, I really, really look up to Chris. I admire the guy so much, and you make designers feel so much more confident about themselves by making the discipline accessible. So yeah, very, very honored to be on the show today with you.
No, dude, you're doing some really awesome things. So it makes my heart happy that you just said that. So amazing. I think the feeling is mutual in terms of respect at what each other are doing. So that's amazing. And awesome topic we have today about how to be a AAA designer. But before we get into that, I want to prompt the audience that this hopefully is as interactive session as you make it. So drop those questions in as we speak about this, because I'm sure when and I'll give you some context later for the audience, but yeah, just drop your questions in and we'll get to them at the end of this, or to the tail end of this conversation. Okay, so some context for the audience, as I promised. Harrison recorded this video about the expectations of designers working at NUMI, which he, shared a little bit just now, and it was amazing, right? Like 14 killer points of how to be a AAA designer, and I think you did it in one take. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I think the video, funny enough, was actually it gets fired off as part of an automation when one of our designers internally gets a new contract signed. And so it's with every single contract that I drop that video, because it's a reminder of how do we do things at NUMI, right? And yeah, I'll let you usher in the points, because I could talk about it literally for like days. Yeah, it wasn't one take, and it was just off the cuff. And it's funny how things work. Like when it's off the cuff, it's probably the best, but I'll do my best to kind of like capture that again.
Sure. Yeah, it was so good that I really had to get you on to speak about them, because I was like, oh, I agree with that. Let's talk about this, right? But I think we should start our conversation here with defining what the hell is a AAA designer? Like in your mind, let's start there, and then we can talk about the 14 points that kind of follow that.
Yeah. So the first point is probably the best summarization of what a AAA designer is. It's someone who's thinking about the problem as a stakeholder, not as someone that's contributing to the solution, right? And so when you kind of look at it in that way, suddenly your whole perspective as a designer changes, right? You're not just really focused on, okay, I'm gonna complete this checklist. Oh, they need to get this modal done. They need to make this this color change. I need to componentize everything. It's really becoming about. It's really something around thinking like a founder and thinking about how do I weigh the customer experience with my own mental health as a designer, with the experience that the business needs to operate. So business needs, customer, and then your own growth and trajectory. So in a nutshell, being a AAA founder, or sorry, being a AAA designer is thinking like a founder.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Yeah, because so many ways, but like really kind of taking ownership of those three concentric circles that overlap, right? The business, the customer, and yourself, because without yourself, it kind of doesn't really make sense. So thinking like a founder and yeah, that just really resonates with me. And I wish I found that out earlier in my journey. I think we all do, right?
Same.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So that's great. Where like that's encapsulates the AAA designer, thinking like a founder, right? So the second point you mentioned was I think versus it should be because. This one's quite
Yeah.
interesting. Do you want to dive into that?
Yeah, of course. So this is for any designer that is working at NUMI, they know that this is like probably my favorite bit. And drop in the comments if you feel like you agree with this or you feel like there's a different take on this. But in my experience, the litmus test for gauging whether a designer is junior or senior is how they start off their sentences. So this is a behavior that you can start enacting today, right? And it's funny, it can span into the business world, but it can also very much span into your personal life as well, or with your friends. And don't forget, people, you can design your emotions, you can design friendships, you can design the world around you, right? So junior designers will start off sentences with I think. It is subjective, it is for themselves, and it's starting from a place that's non-scientific. That is not design. And it's worth noting that like it's art when you start off a sentence with I think, and art is the substrate of design. But design starts off sentences, senior designers start off sentences with it should be because, and then they're pointing to that customer interview that they ran or they analyzed. They're pointing to that KPI. They're pointing to the business stakeholder need. They're pointing to evidence. It's data driven. So junior designers start off with I think, which is subjective. Senior designers start off sentences with it should be because it is objective and it is data driven. There's evidence. It should be because X.
Damn, love that. I absolutely love that. Okay, not much more to add because I wholeheartedly agree with that. Okay, this one is interesting. Pen over pixel. How do you explain this to folks that are working for you or just designers in general?
So again, feel free to rage in the comments with this next perspective. But Figma does not make you a designer. Knowing how to do anything in Framer or Webflow does not make you a designer. Sketch, RIP if you're still using it. I know they still use it at Apple for privacy concerns. But pen over pixel is basically just kind of like this metaphor for ask 1,000 questions before you go into Figma. Figma, for any juniors out there, Figma is not what's going to make you a designer. Anyone can learn something technical like Figma or Framer or something. Really, what makes you a designer is asking the who, the why, the what, the where, the when, the how, right? About the problem space. Figma is just actually any design software is just an implementation detail. By the time that you hop into Figma or any design software, you should have a very, very good understanding of what it is that you're building so that you can leave the program as quickly as humanly possible and get back to the things that matter most. Researching, talking to customers, propagating design thinking throughout your organization, right? X, Y, and Z.
And how, like when we say pen over pixel, how much, I guess, stock do you put into writing, like one form of communication, right? Like whether it's verbal, whether it's written, is that part of this as well?
So, like so many designers, including myself, I very much struggle with writing. I'm a very visual person. my preferred medium is talking and high fidelity mocks, right? So, the thing about it is though, is writing is an essential tool, right? Even by virtue of you trying to get out your thoughts, even if it's in a private environment, not in a public Slack channel, but just in your private notes app on your computer or your phone, expressing your ideas through thought is going to give you so much more clarity. Even if it looks like mumbo jumbo, go ahead to the free chat GPT version and say, please make sense of this, right? And ask me questions to clarify my train of thought, right? That's why these tools are out here, right? But pen over pixel is really just a way of saying, get clarity before you start on the high fidelity stuff and make more work for yourself, figuring out later on that like it's actually not what the customer wanted. It's not really what should have been mocked up in the first place, but really it's about wireframing with just a pen and paper. If you want to wireframe and Figma, like that's fine. But the point is like pen over pixel is just meant to stimulate this idea of get clarity before you hop in, right, to pixel pushing, right?
Yeah.
A designer's role is basically a therapist that pixel pushes, right? How good are we at listening? How good are we at asking questions? So that when we arrive at a design software, there's not guesswork, there's just execution. That's all it is. And so if you get yourself to a place where you understand the problem so well, and you understand all the different states and all the different use cases so well that you can just hop into the program, get it done, get it into a developer's hands, and then work with them so that you have more free time to go do what actually makes you a designer and actually makes you unfireable, which is talking to customers, looking at the data, some of these other points that I'm going to get to. That's really where the juice is, right? That's really where like your designer ethos is going to grow and flourish.
I mean, I agree. I don't want to agree with you like so much, but I do. But let me just play the devil's advocate, or let me steal man the case, right? Okay, so with product development and designing software and even just building things, there's so much complexity, right? And being visual, potentially, I don't know if you found this, but I've definitely found this, where designing multiple things in multiple different ways and exploring actually helps me gain clarity. And because I'm in this playground of like what is right, what is wrong, what feels good, like whatever it is, right? Based on inputs earlier. But is there I guess a case for pixel over pen, or you like hell no, pen over pixel all day?
So you remember I was talking about how art is the substrate of design. Okay, so if design is like if design's like kind of that output of art as the substrate, I heard this wonderful quote. I forgot who it's from, but art is knowing when to call your work done, right? And so I would lean, if you're a designer, I would lean on that inner artist of you, that substrate, right, of design. I would lean on it to figure out when you're actually done. Seeking perfectionism, seeking 5 to 6 to 7 iterations deep, that's not for you, dog. That's a junior designer, right? That's what happens when you find product market fit, PMF. You have earned that right to iterate. But going in and figuring out what is the MVP, what is the minimal viable product that I could ship today that will validate my product and my business operation, right? So typically I'll go in and I only iterate maybe once or twice back in the day, right? But it's because I'm spending a lot of the time talking to my co-founder, talking to the dev team, and coming up with constraints and coming up with rules and regulations, understanding their stack's limitation, their technology's limitation, so that I don't make it harder for them to ship. And once you do that, you are only going into Figma for a bit and just executing. Now, the iteration phase, when you can really start to fuck around, when you can really start to mess around with pixels, right, and iterations, is when you get customer feedback saying like, hey, this is too hard, or hey, this is breaking convention, or hey, like, I'm frustrated. Like, the best is when you are coming up with a way to go and research, right? Like the way that I do UX research is it's taken from the Frog and the IDEO days, right? These like designers, right? That are like way better, way more talented than me. So I'm just taking everything I'm saying is like taking it from their playbook. But basically what you want to do is you want to put yourself in a position where you are asking and observing, not telling them how to do things. So if you reach out to a customer and you tell them, you ask them like, hey, can I have some feedback? They're not going to want to hurt your feelings. So they're not going to give you very rich feedback. So you need to put that person in a position where they are open to giving you critical things that will make your product and you better. So what do? You prompt them. So if you're trying to get some, knee-jerk reactions and feedback that's rich on your sign-up page, you simply tell them in a very demurred way, very objective way, hey, how would you go about signing up, right? And you watch them. And you're going to watch them, rage tap and scroll and put their hand on their head. And there might be some retinal vibration going around the screen and all this fun stuff. And then you're going to say like, hey, like, what was confusing about that? Was there anything in there that was hard to find that you were expecting to see that you didn't? If you had a magic wand, what would you change about that? And so these open-ended questions, this type of feedback gives you the right to iterate. You do not have the right to iterate until you get feedback past your MVP. Otherwise, you're wasting your time, the customer's time, and you're definitely wasting the business's time.
Damn. Okay. I'm a believer. So you did mention talking to your engineering team and trying to figure out tech debt, or the complexity of deploying such solution, right? So your next point is building camaraderie with your engineering team. Like, how does this make you a better designer?
So when you build, this is also another trait that I look for in designers, which is how eager are they to build camaraderie with their engineering team? And this doesn't mean just like you hand it off and you have the red lines all ready to go and you're answering questions over Slack. No, this means that you are talking to them before you even go into Figma. You are whiteboarding with them. You are asking about their opinions. You're asking about these API calls behind every single button. You're asking about unknown unknowns. You are sincerely looking for their opinion on how something works, right? So engineers traditionally are quite methodical, quite reserved characters, right? Not all, but from my experience, most have been. And so the best way to kind of like crack that egg open is to be kindly persistent with sourcing their feedback and showing that you are really, really interested in understanding what they can do and what their capacity is and how they're going to navigate your designs, because your designs are nothing without your engineering team. So if a founder sees that an engineer and a designer are working seamlessly with one another, that founder is not going to want to lose you, dog. That founder is going to like put a premium on your role because it means that you can move autonomously with your engineering team while the founder goes out and raises more money or crafts the story or the vision or whatever they're doing that day, right? But that's what I mean by building camaraderie with your engineering team. And, you know, kind of going back to number three, you know, pen over pixel. There's certain hills that you want to die on. And, you know, I'm paraphrasing from, you know, my buddy Zain Ali, who, if anyone doesn't know, look him up on LinkedIn. He is a real G. He was the founding designer at Instacart and Y Combinator. And now he's running Nature's Promise, or Nature's Keeper, rather. And he said that there's a few moments where that iteration does actually happen before PMF. And it's those few moments where you have to kind of like pick and choose what hill you want to die on. And when you're dying on the hill to maybe release that opening animation that perfectly captures or sets the tone for your app, or maybe it's you know, back in the day it was that effing confetti cannon thing, right? That the word delight getting like sniped in the head over and over again. You know, those are hills to die on, right? Because they are integral to expressing the ethos of the product, right? And so a lot of this may get abstract, so feel free to like leave comments in the below. I'll do my best to like answer them along with Chris. But, you know, really it's all about picking and choosing, and picking and choosing with your engineering team, because that engineering team is going to go up to bat with you when marketing or sales or legal or the founding team is butting heads with you. And so if an engineering team and a design team are a united front, which is not common, not a whole lot of people in the company are going to be able to buck up against that.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I haven't seen too many engineering team and design team really be like so close, but when you see it, it's amazing. And really, really small teams can run so fast and actually make a lot of things. And I think a company to note here, and I always talk about them, which is Basecamp or 37 Signals, right? Where they have real small teams and they just ship, right? They have it. There's a habit of just releasing stuff and working together and just kind of having this jam session, and it feels great when you're like in that mode of like you, an engineer, and maybe someone else from another team, and really you're in sort of a flow state on the whiteboard or whatever it is, like whatever that working environment. There's something that should be tangible, but it's so intangible. But there's definitely a concrete feeling that I felt, and it's probably been my favorite sort of working environment. And because engineers will like give you shit, right? Like they will be like, "What about this? What about this?" And you're like, "I don't know." Like, let me go back, right? And so good.
That moment right there, for anyone that's listening, your first reaction, because it's just human nature, is going to want to be defensive. Why is this engineer giving me such like, you know, a hard time? Like, what? Really dial your ego back for a second. This engineer is having to build, like, it's not just a button that they have to build. They have to connect that button to a color schema. They have to connect that button to an API call. They have to connect that button to a choreographed space within the page. Like there's so many things that they have to do. And if you get out ahead of these problems, then suddenly your defensive nature becomes collaborative. Suddenly that defensive nature is working a lot more like the Stripe team or the Robinhood team or the Apple team, where there is a harmonious relationship between engineering and design. And that's known as the product team, right? And so that's really where you want to end up, is being part of a product team versus engineering and design, and separating those two. They should be together. And I think the more that you aim towards that, you're going to soon realize that designers and engineers, through evidence of the progression of tooling that we're finding in 2024, are a lot more similar than we might have given it credit for.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like on the flip side, point 5, don't be a yes man.
Yeah.
So, what do you have to say about that, Harrison? Because I'm sure there's lots of tea around. Don't be a yes man. So, what's going on?
So we all know what a yes man is, and nothing is more infuriating. You can pretty much find them in every single like Fortune 500 company, and it's when a company is maybe going through a growth stage, or maybe they are just not able to be kept in line by a founder mode founder, right? And so what you find is a lot of people around the founding team or the executive team, maybe even your managers of things or your PMs, uh, they're going to say yes just to get their KPIs up, right? And so what you might find is that that's actually the easier thing to do. And so maybe you adopt it. And so this is misguided, right? Because here are these leaders that you're trying to look up to that are exhibiting behavior that you have in your gut known to be not the right thing, that you should be speaking up. But it is all about picking and choosing your battles. And so not being a yes man basically means if you have an opinion, say it, but choose when and how and where you say it. So embarrassing the PM that's responsible for launching your mocks, and if it's in direct like contrast to maybe what they're saying, probably not the best idea. But pulling that PM aside and pulling that founder aside and being like, hey, in that last meeting, I didn't want to say it because I didn't want to like, knock anyone down, but I really do think that we should be pursuing X. Here's my reason. Here's the evidence. Remember, it should be this because here's the evidence. And if they're not about it, you just got to let it roll off, right? And that's not the same thing as being a yes man. Being a yes man or not being a yes man is just not sharing your opinions, and that can be really, really damaging as you progress on, because founders love opinionation. Founders are hardwired to want to delegate and make champions of people that are working on tasks that the founders were hand rolling up until they hired them, right? So if you're someone that is, doing design work in an organization and you're just saying like, yes, I'll complete this. Yes, I'll do this. Yes, I'll make that modal. Yes, I'll make the sign up page. You're soon not going to be turned to as someone that can provide value to the bottom line, right? And you're not going to be able to really shape the product because no one's going to really take you seriously when you do have an opinion or you do want to butt your head up against something. And sometimes things can get a little tense and charged. The best thing to do is just breathe and get oxygen as quickly as you can to your head, and make sure that you are presenting evidence and not an objective, or sorry, not a subjective I think. It should be because, and this is why. And sometimes founders or PMs or whatever, the director that you're working with, they're not going to see it, but when they do, you're going to feel better about yourself, and the customer is going to feel that.
I want to like clump number 8 and number 9 together because it's kind of rolling off what you said.
Sure.
It's so number 8 is don't wait for someone to check in, and number 9 is send thoughts, ideas, and what if statements in real time. Because you mentioned founders love opinionated people to work with, right? They kind of breathe off that and survive off that. So let's chat about this one.
So I'll go to number 9 first, because I do agree. I think it's like an excellent segue. So number 9 is send ideas, thoughts, whatever you have on your mind about the product at any given time. Send it to the founder, right? Send it to the PM. Send it at like 2 a.m. Whatever it is, because that's going to show someone that you are on their mind. And it's just like dating, right? During those early days, those texts that you send or receive where it's like, thinking about you, bae, right? Like thing, right? A founder wants to know that they're being thought of. A founder wants to know that their product is being considered at all hours. Now, I'm not saying like wait until 2 a.m., stay up. You should be getting good sleep, designers, but make sure that you are sharing everything whenever you can. What if statements? What if we did this? What about if we thought about it this way? Pushing on the team that you work with is really, really important. Showing that vigor, showing that passion from evidence, right? That's only going to make you look that much better, that much more seasoned, right? Because it's something where like, you don't want someone, and this kind of goes to 8, you don't want someone to see you as someone that has to check in all the time. You want to be a designer that's anticipatory. And the best way to do that is, using something like the stoplight method. We write about it on NUMI.tech blog. But, the stoplight method is more or less talking with the stakeholders and saying like, hey, do you agree that this is like a medium difficulty after estimating it? Yes, I agree. Okay, cool. So I think I can have this done by Friday, but let's be sure to check in on Tuesday and Thursday to make sure that we're on the right track. So just by virtue of doing that, you're setting expectations, and you're also defending yourself against like these rando Slack messages being like, hey, any update? And then us as designers, we want every update to be like nice, polished, and pretty. But really the founder's just looking for the PM or whatever. They're just really looking for like a sketch, or they're looking for like a screenshot where it's like an audio message. Lean into your strengths. Like maybe it's just an audio message being like, hey, I'm exploring, like nothing's done like this. Nothing's done here, but I'd love your opinion on this right here. Where do you think that it's missing certain elements? Or prompt them, right? Give updates, like be anticipatory, and don't wait for people to check in, because that's going to piss them off, because then you're associating in their mind that you are not organized. You are not able to manage their expectations, that you are using GPU cycles in their brain to check in on your work. And that is so annoying. Like the best designers that I've worked with are presenting information to me, right? They are inputting towards my direction versus me having to make time and put in effort to reach out to them, right? That is annoying. So don't wait for someone to check in, but instead use something like the stoplight method, where you estimate with the stakeholder together, you arrive on an aspirational date, and then you have check-ins in between so that you guys can protect each other's time and make people feel, well considered.
Yeah, yeah, really like that. I think that it doesn't just have to be designers. I think like anyone awesome that you work with is really good at managing expectations, and they're very proactive, and they're just like, hey, what about this? What about this? And it's just more fun, right? Where, oh, you care about the thing that we're working on. So do I. Let's vibe and let's do something about it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You touched on a bunch of things here. And okay, again, I'm going to kind of clump some of these together just because of timing.
For
You
sure.
mentioned track KPIs, track data. You spoke about this, but how I guess how does it work in NUMI, so we can kind of see how the sausage is made, and how do your designers kind of do this?
So we always look to designers to get out of Figma and back to the things that actually push the company forward. And so that means coming up with experiments with your PM. Hey, I'd love to, in the most rudimentary form, right? Hey, I'd love to test this orange button versus this yellow button. Okay, well, we know from color theory that orange is makes you move faster, but yellow makes you curious. Think of like a school bus or a pencil. It's like basic color theory, right? So look at the context of your screen of like your product. Well, if it's a learning app, maybe it's a darker yellow. But if you're worried about conversion that month, maybe it does go to orange, right? So you need to set up an A/B experiment, right? And so hopping into the experiment land that you're maybe not comfortable with, lean into it, right? Go and run experiments, and then a KPI is basically something that you are tracking. So the KPI in terms of this experiment might be um, what gets higher conversion. Is it the orange button or is it the yellow button? So tracking KPIs. And so if you don't want to run an experiment and maybe you're just like totally overwhelmed with that, that's understandable. Show an interest. Reach out to your PM and say, hey, can I look at the data real quick? Can I see like our traffic on our site? Can I see the traffic in this onboarding flow? And if you see the onboarding flow, this is just an example. If you see on the onboarding flow, it's like, it's not going like this, but instead it's going like this, then right there in this middle part, you can now propagate it over Slack and be like, hey, I noticed this data. Does anyone have any idea of what might be going on? I have an idea of how we might be able to improve this, but I want it to start a discussion. And so right there, what you're doing is you are literally making the design discipline that much more valuable because it came from a designer and you are stimulating a conversation. So to round it all out, tracking KPIs goes a little bit deeper. Flirt with experimentation and propagate data. And if you're unsure about that, just work with your stakeholder one-on-one to try to understand, how do I read this data? How should I be interpreting it? Is it accurate? What streams is it flowing in from? And suddenly your PM's looking at you like, this is not just a designer. This is someone that I can lean on to thought partner with. And when you become a thought partner as a designer, you immediately jump to the top 5 percentile globally. You are suddenly a global designer and not just a regional one.
Love that. Okay, because of time, let's hit the last one, which I think deserves a bit of a spotlight, which is mind your mental health.
Yes. So we talk about this often. I'll often send reminders to designers about minding their mental health and what you can do. I'd be really curious if anyone's watching this to, leave your comments below about like, how do you keep track of your mental state? How do you watch out for burnout? Some of the things that I've learned in my past is every half an hour or so, just get up and take a walk, get outside without your phone. Don't look at your phone in the morning. Don't look at your phone at night just before you wake up or go to bed. Make sure that you're getting good nutrition. My girlfriend is incredible at like feeding this household the right stuff and making sure like I even get water, because we just forget. Designers, we are all so like consumed with doing things for others. Naturally, that's our state, is designing for others. But just like those airline videos where the mask fall down from the ceiling, those airlines, they say, before helping others, help yourself first, right? Like by putting on your mask before you put on like someone else's mask or so. But really, it's just making sure that you're setting yourself up for success. And a good baseline, if there's one thing to take away from it, is get more sleep than you think you need. This hustle culture, this like 996 culture, man, don't work more, work smart.
Yeah, I found myself just looking at my phone too much when I'm not at the laptop. Like it feels like I always need to be connected. So I've like, okay, the rule, phone outside. I got an alarm clock that's like a dumb alarm clock, nothing special, right? And I was just like, okay, let me just experiment with if this actually makes me sleep better. And for the last like couple of weeks, it definitely has changed, right? So get yourself a crappy alarm clock for like a couple of bucks on Amazon, and just you don't need your phone by you. There's nothing that would be like an emergency. Like let's hope not anyway, but you can kind of plan around that as well. So I really like that tip. Yeah.
And like think about it. Like if there's an emergency, someone's gonna reach out to you. Like come hell or high water, someone will find a way to get in a communication channel that's open in your moment. So I have do not disturb on, and it's like Fort Knox right now. But if an emergency were to really happen, someone could just dial the number twice and iOS just lets them through, right? I think it's the same thing with Android, but just know that you can stay protected and you can just focus on yourself or your work or whatever you're doing, and just leave the phone away.
Yeah, exactly. And that I'm lucky like you, Harrison, where I also have a partner that is like, hey, eat good food and remember to drink water. And that's so important because I'm just like at the screen, just kind of, zoning in. And someone also said that, yes, I even forget to eat breakfast sometimes. And I think that's happened to all of us, right? Where we're in some kind of flow state that we don't want to interrupt. And sometimes it's okay to skip 1 or 2 meals. I think we eat too many meals anyway. Who said breakfast, lunch, and dinner was the right way to do it? But anyway, if you're into intermittent fasting, then maybe you skip breakfast. But it's true. Your physical health definitely affects your mental health long term, right?
100%.
So let's go into the section of Q&As. We have some questions here that I want to run by you. Okay, Harrison, let's bring this on screen. What key design skills turn good products into great ones? And how can we build a team that has these skills?
Yeah, Marcos, great question. So how often do you talk to your customers, right? So like a design skill is being able to reach out and land conversations with your team or with you, someone that's maybe synthesizing it. But we always tell startups, like, it depends obviously what industry you're in, but a good rule of thumb is you should be talking to customers like you should be talking to like as many customers as you can, like maybe like 10 or so a week. And so this design skill is what turns good products into great ones, when you can actually start to read in between the lines. And how can you build a team that has these skills? Well, I have always found in my experience that when you inspire people with great content, that they're going to want to be a part of that creation. So if you come to your team with new information or new insights about your customer, you may very well inspire them to be part of that process as well, and to get more involved. Or maybe they come up to you after and they would be like, oh man, like I wish I had known that you were doing this or something, or because I would have asked like this question or wanted to find out this statement or XYZ. And so just to answer your question succinctly, like what key design skills turn products into great ones? How often you're talking to your customers, and how can you build a team that has these skills? You need to inspire them with the work that you're doing in step number 1.
Okay, another one for you, Harrison. About availability and working hours at NUMI. How many hours do you require designers to be available per week? I'm asking because I noticed the input field. Okay, this input field. Explain the input field.
The input field, you're probably is about just referring to the designer application, which very, very happy to see your work and like see that application come through. But I think it's a minimum of 10 hours. And, when it's a week and when it's when we talk to clients, and this is something that everyone watching this video that's a designer should recognize, is you should never list out your work in terms of hours. And because when you do that, you are commodifying a field that so easily gets commodified outright and throughout history. Instead, you want to lean on that stoplight process and arrive at days. Hey, I can get it done by this day. Or speak in terms of capacity. Hey, I have 20% remaining capacity, or that's out of bounds for what we're doing, or maybe there's feature creep or something. But it's just be honest with yourself when you're filling out the application. However many extra hours you have available, that's your answer.
Okay, follow-up question for Isabel, which is what does the design hiring process look like? Because they are different in different companies. What does it look like at NUMI?
At NUMI, well, yours truly looks at every single portfolio and every single video submission. And then after that, you'll receive an email asking you to go through a second round of interviews where you're going to meet with, my colleague Hannah Pobar. And she is also, everyone on NUMI leadership is a designer and a founder. So we are going to look for skill sets around how you think, how you answer, how you present your work. And little pro tip, when you are crafting a portfolio, if you don't have any words describing your process or maybe a stat that starts off with where you guys started and what the design did to change that statistic, it's a pass. I don't really, spend time looking at portfolios that don't have case studies or can't explain work. When it's just visual, it just turns into pixel porn, like on Dribble. It's just worthless stuff that not worthless. Like there's something to be said about visual design and all the illustrators on there. It's definitely worthwhile. And like the motion is definitely worthwhile. But UI and UX stuff, what we're talking about right now, if it's just these screenshots of your mocks, like looking all pretty of that calculator app, I don't know. Not for me.
Okay, Isabel. So yeah, take that when you apply. I have a follow-up question here, but I feel like I've probably asked so many questions. So let's take a question from YouTube. As I ask, what is the right balance between research and experimentation?
Great question. Okay, so you remember what I was saying before about like how an artist knows when they're done with their work? How does a designer know when they're done with research, right? When you can start anticipating what the person is going to say in the research, that's when you know that it's okay to put your UX research motion on the shelf momentarily. And now it's time to go back to your engineering and product team and ideate around how might we's. So how might we X? How might we X? And the X's are coming from the observations that you learned. And so if you don't have a one-to-one mapping of your feature product roadmap and your how might we's, that's not good. You actually don't know your customer as well as you thought you did. So you know that you're done with experimentation just momentarily, because research should always be happening when you can anticipate that a customer is going to say something before they even say it. But watch out also, because that can lead into unconscious bias pretty quickly.
We have another one here from Jane. How do you define good quality? Is it great UI or if it achieves a metric set?
Metrics. Yeah, so metrics define the usage, right? So a UI is, so basically, there's that old example of like, what's the difference between like UI and UX, right? So it's like, well, UX is the bowl holding the cereal, right? And UI is the interface to interact with the content, the Cheerios, right? So UI is obviously very, very important, but Craigslist became a multi-billion-dollar company off the backs of blue URL links. And last I checked, they're still going like pretty hella strong. So I hope that's your answer. And I know it's like very hurtful to everyone's inner visual, like it is mine, but remember, earn the right to focus on visual stuff after you have gotten customer validation. You will feel loads better about yourself, and the come down from when a customer doesn't use your product to when you realize how many hours you put into a mock on Figma, it will be a lot softer and a lot shorter of a fall.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so David asked, what are good metrics to measure? I mean, this is very vague, but answer it how you would, Harrison. What are good metrics to measure, I guess, as a designer?
Yeah, so I could talk about it maybe in two pieces, just anticipating like maybe which avenue you're talking about. Well, for yourself, what are good metrics to measure within your own personal growth trajectory? And that is maybe how often your teammates are looking to you for advice or opinionation. Okay. Now, another metric to measure your design is the usage. How often are customers using your design implementation versus, let's say, the previous state? So if that wasn't the question, feel free to drop another comment as a follow-up, and I can help.
I have a question here. So with all the points that you've mentioned, do we need scrum masters, project managers, sort of this middleman glue between engineering and some
No,
of the other teams? No. Oh, wow.
no,
Just straight up.
just no. And so I think if anyone is watching that doesn't know Paul Graham, you must read 2 episodes by Paul Graham. Essays by Paul Graham. The first is Do Things That Don't Scale. And the second one is Founder Mode. Founder Mode is basically the idea of, and it should not be confused with micromanaging, but it's basically the idea of a founder going in and doing the work themselves and setting up their team members for success, making sure that they are constantly building up their champions and not leaning on yes man directors or managers or these scrum masters to just organize things. Everyone at a company should be in founder mode. Everyone at a company should be feeling like they can move autonomously as their own leader. And I have mixed feelings about Mark Zuckerberg, but he said something that really, really stuck with me, which is I would never hire someone that I wouldn't be willing to take orders from. Okay. And so when looking at our own hiring practices, making sure that you can lean on someone, no matter how junior, for something that they're specialized for. That's really like the cat's meow, right?
Yeah, founder mode. I thought it to be really, really interesting, but there was definitely a portion of the population that had some blowback. But I'm definitely in on founder mode. Okay, cool. Yeah. So why I asked that question, Harrison, was because some of the teams I've been on obviously had scrum masters or project managers, but the best teams that I've been on has been design led and with a very, very close engineering partner. And I love that it's design led because, to your point of pen over pixel, lots and lots of questions, figuring out what do we work on and really holding the client to be the product manager because they are, industry experts, closer to the problem, closer to the customer. And then we just plug in. So we actually, when I was working at this consultancy, we had no product managers and no scrum masters. We had a project manager, but it was very much just communication and kind of calendar setting and stuff like that. And that was fine, but not really like telling people what to do. And I think a lot of companies out there have that, right? Where it's like the project manager is the person to be like directing traffic. And it's like, look, you must do this. And you're like, what are you talking about? Like, you don't know what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've had that experience in the past.
So there's project and then there's product managers, right? So project, they could go away. I think useless role. Product managers, they are separate types of PMs. Product managers, the best ones I've noticed are people that are able to get a little bit technical in terms of data, setting up experimentation, but their main goal is to round up all the ideas and all the feedback and work with the designers and work with the engineers to make sense of it in an approachable way. Right. And so if you have a product manager that's able to wholly define the product and what it should be based off of all the inputs that the company is receiving through all of its different departments, that's a good role. Like that's a solid role. But project, simply managing time, that is a result of a company that is uninspired. That is the result of a company that is unable to manage themselves because they feel that they need to get this product out because that's how much they believe in the product itself. When you have a team that is inspired and believes in what they're working on, they're going to not have any need for someone to tell them when it's due. They're trying to get that shit out as fast as humanly possible. But product managers, I think, are a necessary step sometimes, like in slightly later stage companies, because there are just so many inputs that are coming into a company that it's not possible for, you know, a designer or an engineer when they're focused so much on their craft and their discipline to take in everything all at once and make sense of it.
That's right. David, again, what would be good practices in terms of productivity when you are the only designer in the organization? My case, so a designer team of one.
Yeah. Designer team of one, very challenging role. First and foremost, what comes to mind is like designers are naturally, it's naturally a collaborative state, right? So making sure that you are not only going out to your team with really like hacky check-ins of like, hey, this is what I'm working on, this is the right direction, I want to like check in just before like I spend any more time on this. That's going to save you a lot of time. Not only that, but it's also going to build a lot of goodwill. And like, remember, the more that people come to you for opinionation and reliability, like that's a good metric for yourself. So then more like tactically speaking, you know, I've tried everything under the sun, you know, in terms of productivity, to-do lists and all that fun stuff. But really the best thing to do is just keep three or four things that you want to get done that day and do it in between the hours of like 9 and 1. Those are your most productive hours, like statistics show, when your brain is just firing on all cylinders, right? Making sure though that there's also good sleep prior to that day, making sure that there's good nutrients to feed your brain, you know, that morning or the night before, and making sure that your mental state. So it's actually a lot less about like maybe like tools and like, you know, methods. It's more so the preparation to avoid unnecessary work, right? You may find that if you do all these things ahead of time, like keep a good mental state, keep good camaraderie with the founding team and the engineering team and all the other departments, you may find that you're actually doing a lot less work, but you're doing the right work. And so again, you may have more time to iterate on the visuals.
Yeah, and I found that yeah, you need to protect your time when you talk about productivity, right? So you could have some loose rules around like, hey, these are the times where like I really need to get stuff done. You could also be transparent with your workload because like as a designer team of one, everything is coming to you, like every single like marketing asset or whatever. So there you could also like publish your, let's just say, backlog um to the entire company and be like, look, here's the queue of work done, right? Like here's the expectation. I could do it, but you're gonna have to like be prioritized in this list, right?
Yeah, that's great advice.
Right. And it could be as simple as a Trello board or a Notion board, whatever it is, or it can even be a physical whiteboard. Like we used to do this
Yeah,
in our team where we
yeah,
have like our top one, and it's like, okay, well, I can't do that today, dude. Like, look at the whiteboard, right? And that really helps like folks, well, helps you protect your time, but also communicate outwardly. Not to say that you're difficult to work with. It's just like, hey, I am one person. It's one person and there's 20 engineers. Like there's only so much I can do, right?
yeah.
So yeah, have some rules around that as well. And I think folks would also respect that because you know, we all understand how hard it is to just churn out stuff, right?
And that is great advice. And like, just to add to that, you know, keeping your like top of focus goals, like just maybe 1 or 2 goals that you say like, I am definitely going to get done. You're going to find every excuse on planet Earth to not get to those goals, to write back to your friends about tonight's plans, to make sure that like you replace your Kleenex box at your desk, to make sure that like, you know, your keyboards are like have no dust in it, whatever. It's just stupid shit, right? Like, just make sure that you are setting yourself up for success and not overwhelming yourself with 1 to 2 items. 1 to 2 items, like the whole point of that exercise, and it's what Warren Buffett does, by the way. So again, everything I've said, not me, way smarter people than me. And Warren Buffett's a pretty smart fucking dude. So he just puts like 1, 2 things on his list that he's going to get done that day, no matter what. But it's part of a larger list of things that needs to get done. And just like you were saying, when an engineer or a founder reaches out to you or a PM is like, hey, I need this done ASAP. Hey, I'm totally down to get this done. I understand this urgency. Make them feel heard. Okay. Repeat the task, invoke active listening, and then put the power in their court and say like, hey, happy to work on this, but that means that I might have to sacrifice X deliverable. No, we need all of them done. Hey, I know you want high quality work, and that's what I pride myself on. I know this is what like the clients, you know, see in us. In order to do that, I do need help trying to figure out at what quality level do you want X and what quality level you want, you know, Y, if you do want them done at the same time, or help me prioritize what I should be working on first, right? So there's speed and there's quality constraints. Put it back in their hands. Like if they're asking, they should be prepared to prioritize.
Absolutely. That's great. Yeah, exactly. What would you prefer, A or B of this list, right? And yeah, exactly. Push that ball back into their court. So 2 very similar portfolio questions. The first one is, as a beginner, how would you go about building a strong UX portfolio? So keep that in mind. And then this freshman product design student is applying for internships. Also, what types of projects should I include to get these internships? So both about building strong portfolios as beginners.
Great questions. Okay, rule number 1, never apply to a job, ever. Never apply to a job. The best thing to do is find products that you admire, find the companies building those products, find the people in those companies that are in charge of making those products, and reach out to them expressing your admiration. 1 to 2 sentences. Don't give this whole fucking like long, like, you know, life story. I don't have time for it, right? So the best thing to do is a couple sentences. Hey, I'd love to hear your story on how you arrived at the position that you're in. I love this product because of X, and I just want to grab maybe like 5 to 10 minutes of your time. Cal.com link, right? And so suddenly you're putting someone in a position where they have to say no to a 5 to 10 minute meeting. Like, what type of jerk is going to say no to that when they're getting asked advice, right? So set yourself up for success, and don't ask for a 15 or a half an hour meeting or like, you know, specifics on your portfolio. The best thing to do is reach out to companies that you admire, reach out to the people building those products and ask them about their genesis story. I want to hear, maybe over a 5-10 minute call, how you got to where you got to, and just get your knee-jerk reaction on how I'm thinking about breaking into the space. That will get you a job a lot faster than if you were to apply through LinkedIn or, you know, whatever. Don't ever apply. That's not how people get jobs, right? People get jobs in like Silicon Valley because of networks, people, building relationships. That's how you actually get the job that you want. I'm not saying that people don't get jobs through like the front door, but I would reckon that like 70% of the jobs that get posted, they were actually internally already posted weeks before they hit the internet, right? And like, it's only by virtue of posting it that maybe their network, the company's network, wasn't actually as strong as they thought in order to attract talent. The other question, and the second part, the second part of Ayusha's question is, what to put in your portfolio? Great question. Okay. Try your very hardest. I'll tell you what I did for Imgur to be number 12 employee, right? So again, I've never applied to a job. I've always just reached out to stakeholders. But I love this idea of giving away a little snack before you give the whole kitchen, right? So I redesigned the whole Imgur app, right? On Photoshop, guys. Before Sketch, before Figure, I designed it on Photoshop with smart layers, like shoot me now, right? And I posted it on Imgur and I said, hey, does anyone have feedback? How can I make this more accessible? I tried to focus on the following problems and here are the solutions. If anyone wants to develop this with me, you know, I would love to round this out, but here are a few signature states tackling X, Y, and Z problems that you all have surfaced that I also experience, right? And so that it's still up on Imgur, right, as one of like the top voted images, right? But I get a call from Alan, the CEO, basically saying like, hey, I saw your mocks. I thought it was a joke. And so I hung up. And then Bryn, one of the senior engineers, bless his soul, calls me back. He's like, hey, this is Bryn and Alan. This isn't a prank or anything. Like we're looking at your mocks right now. We're really, really impressed. And so you can either grab someone's attention and like create your own luck, or you can create your luck in another dimension and reach out for people's story and listen and learn. And they're not dumb, guys. Like they know that they can look at your LinkedIn. They know that you're an intern. But just by virtue of not bringing up yourself and hearing them, they're going to want to ask you questions about your own path and how they might be able to help, because that's just natural human behavior. If they're not a decent person, they're not going to do that, right? But like most people will do that. And another note on portfolio, let's say that you have no real work, right? So again, we talked about like going after companies that have bad products that you use that you want to see better, or maybe it's not even a whole product. Maybe it's just a feature, or maybe rethinking something else, right? That's easy. And you can start off with a problem statement, right? And you can start off with why you did what you did. And then you can go out to people, like random people, and you can prompt them and record them and put those sessions up online. And suddenly it's like, I'm looking at an intern right now that made that rethought of an Apple Music feature and then went out and tried to test it with a high fidelity Figma prototype and got feedback and then iterated off that feedback and then posted that new iteration. You didn't have to land a job to do that, right? So there should be really no excuse for, oh, I don't have a real world, job. I don't have anything to show. No, stay away from the calculator app, stay away from the calendar apps and all that junk. Go out and solve a real problem. And if you're not redoing something for a company like a feature or the whole damn app, just go ask your family what are problems they're dealing with and try to design for them and start off from where you guys started and then how that design actually influenced the behavior and where you guys ended up.
Yeah, there's this whole debate about free work and should we do it? And I'm just thinking like, do these designers even want jobs? Do they even are they passionate about design? Do they love what they're doing? If they're like, no, I can only get rewarded if I spend 1 minute on this thing, someone should reward me. I'm just like, God damn it. Like, why?
Yeah.
Like, just you might not belong in the field, right? Like, it's just so frustrating that this free work concept is like, everybody does free work all the time. It's kind of a thing. Like, what the hell, man? Like,
Yeah.
what? I don't understand.
Yeah. So like take-home tests for anything past a junior designer, I don't agree with, right? But I only don't agree with that assuming that their portfolios are doing the walking and the talking, right? And so paid trials is something I definitely believe in, 1 to 2 weeks, or even like something like small, like 3 days, just to kind of like riff with the designer for a full-time job with benefits and all this fun stuff. Like, you're not willing to sacrifice a little of your time as a junior designer to show them like what you're worth. It gets easier, guys. But if you are worried about doing free work when you're a junior, what does the world owe you exactly in your mind? You need to work. You need to get yourself into the industry first. And then you could start complaining about how the world is unfair, right? But first things first is like making sure that you're not subscribing to a poor me, pity me mentality, but that you're saying like, okay, I'm gonna start to focus in on a solution space. I am going to make sure that I do whatever it takes. And here's another pro tip. If a company if a company calls you for an interview and they end up going with someone else, you can get really valuable feedback by asking, hey, was there anything in the other applicant that you found that you didn't find in me? Getting that feedback is so critically important. And as designers, we should not shy away from that critical feedback. In fact, we should lean into it and try your very hardest to pull it out of the people that have judged you for a job, right?
Yeah. Okay. So we have time for one more question because we've taken a lot of your time, dude. So really appreciate that. But one more question. Okay, here we go. Uh, Harrison, do you have specific KPIs to measure regarding user experience to show the impact of the design? Again, quite high level. How would you answer that?
It really all comes back to customers and usage, right? So nothing really matters, right? So if it depends, let's just, for the purposes of this question, like let's just take an onboarding flow, right? So if your onboarding flow is getting redesigned before you even start designing, you should first get a lay of the land of what is the conversion rate right now. Okay, let's say it's 5% right now. Okay, well, where's the drop off? Sign up is good. Showing them a little product demo is good, good, good. Everything's good. Oh, but right here we have a huge drop off. Why? Zooming in on that and then reaching out to the customers that dropped off because maybe you had their email address, finding out what was uncomfortable about giving your email address. Well, they might say like, well, I didn't really know what to expect in the product. Okay, well, that insight should turn into you giving a little piece of the product, maybe on the homepage, so that there's trust established early on, so that by the time that they have to save their work at the highest point of intent, they feel comfortable giving their email address because you've given them value, right? So really, it's just about how often are you talking to your customers and how often are you iterating against their feedback? And Sam Altman said something that, again, is really like stuck with me, which is it should be every company's goal to become the fastest iterating company in the world, right? And you can only iterate based off of customer feedback.
Great. That's I think a great place to end it. Harrison, again, thank you so much for your
Thank
time.
you.
No, it was a pleasure, dude. Like I really like talking to you. Before we let you go, and I do the wrap up, let's do a PSA. Can you plug anything, share anything, or ask anything at all? Plug, share, and ask.
Chris, I am very, very grateful. I look up to you, man, as like someone that's inspiring. I admire what you put out. So anyone that's watching this, just continue to subscribe to like this good advice that this guy gives. Like he knows what he's talking about, and he has everyone's best interest at heart. As far as me, I'm working on NUMI. So if you are a founder that needs design work, go to numi.tech and get started. If you are a designer that is just getting started, or maybe you're super senior, we would love to talk to you about working with some of our clients. A lot of them are Y Combinator clients, Techstars, the like. And so you get to work on really, really cool products with really, really talented founders that respect our discipline. And if you are a designer that is getting started on their business and want to increase the throughput and the ease of which you can work on growing your business, flowglad.com is for you. And there's no product release yet, but we got some good things cooking.
All right, I'm very excited to see what you guys have in the kitchen. Okay, so Harrison, thank you again. I'm going to take you off stage. Give me 5 minutes. Don't leave, and we'll have a chat afterwards. Okay, just give me 2 secs.
Peace,
All
y'all.
right,
Thanks for having me.
thanks, man. All right, folks, just some housekeeping before we end today. If you want to listen to more conversations like this, where I get to ask designers, senior designers from all over the world, anything, and you get to ask them too, subscribe to here to get notified for our next event. And if I can tell you about the next event, the next one is on October 30th, where I'll actually be speaking to the folks at Dovetail about their 3.0 release. Really exciting, lots of great customer insight tools. As we spoke to Harrison, this stuff is really important, guys. So how can we better leverage tools out there in 2024 to get better customer insight and not to be so manual? Maybe, you writing on a pad and running out and just speaking to everybody at the supermarket, maybe something more sophisticated so you can get back to experimentation. So that's not next week, a couple of weeks from now. And again, if you would like to get notified about it so you don't have to tune in and remember the date, here is that QR code. So I am going to get Harrison back on just for some final words and thank him again. Any final words before we go, dude?
Any final words? Make sure you stick up for yourself when you really believe in something powerful. And when you get the feeling of being scared to do something, instead of doing the default thing and running away from it, instead just lean into it and know that that is probably a signal that you should be doing more of that thing.
Amazing. Thank you, dude.
Not
all right. Sorry, say that again?
I said not jumping off a cliff or anything, but I'm talking about like putting yourself out there,
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, until next time, guys, thank you very much. I'm gonna play this outro. Till next time, bye.